Pinocchio. Once upon a time, there was an enchanted block of wood that could walk, talk, and dance. Antonio, the carpenter who owned the piece of wood, was scared of this strange object and decided to give it to his friend Geppetto. Geppetto was a poor man who dreamed of becoming a puppet master. But first, he needed to make a puppet. Geppetto decided to use the enchanted block of wood to make his puppet. He carved it into the form of a young boy and called it Pinocchio. Once Geppetto finished carving Pinocchio, the lifelike puppet began to dance for joy. He looked and behaved just like a real boy. "You must go to school to become a real boy," Geppetto told Pinocchio. However, Pinocchio was a troublemaker and didn't obey Geppetto. On the way to school, Pinocchio saw a puppet show. He was so excited that he jumped onto the stage and danced with the other puppets. Pinocchio had so much fun dancing and performing with the other puppets that he completely forgot that he was supposed to go to school that day. But the owner of the puppet show, Fire Eater, decided to burn one of his puppets because he had no more firewood to cook his dinner. He looked at all of the puppets and chose Pinocchio. Pinocchio begged and begged Fire Eater not to burn him. Thankfully, Fire Eater changed his mind. He gave Pinocchio 5 pieces of gold and told him to go home to his father. On his way home, Pinocchio met a fox and a cat dressed like people. They were bandits who tricked people and stole their money. The fox and the cat lured Pinocchio to a big tree, pretending to be blind and asking for Pinocchio's help. The fox and the cat tied up Pinocchio, stole his gold, and then ran away, leaving Pinocchio hanging from the tree. Pinocchio loudly cried for help. A fairy heard his cry and rescued him. A few hours later, Pinocchio woke up in a warm, comfortable bed. Beside him was the fairy who saved him. "You are the puppet that disobeyed his father, Geppetto, by not going to school," said the fairy. "That's not true," said Pinocchio. As he said these words, his nose grew very long. Pinocchio promised the fairy that he would not lie anymore and that he would go to school. When Pinocchio returned home, Geppetto was so happy to see his little boy again and forgave him for not obeying his orders. He decided to throw a big party to celebrate. Pinocchio invited his best friend from the village, Candlewick. However, Candlewick had another idea. "Instead of going to the party, why don't we go to Toyland?" asked Candlewick. "We can play there all day long." Pinocchio agreed, forgetting his promise to his father. Pinocchio was having such a good time in Toyland that he forgot to go back home. After weeks of playing all day long, Pinocchio was magically transformed into a donkey. He started performing in a circus where he was forced to jump through flaming hoops. One day, Pinocchio fell and sprained his ankle while performing. Because Pinocchio couldn't jump anymore, the ringmaster sold him to a man who wanted to use his donkey fur to make a coat. To escape, Pinocchio jumped into the ocean. A big whale swimming into the ocean saw Pinocchio jump into the water. The whale was very hungry and decided that Pinocchio would make for the perfect dinner. The salt water magically transformed Pinocchio back into a puppet. As Pinocchio was swimming back to the shore, he saw the big whale coming up from behind him. He tried to swim away from the whale, but it was no use. The whale quickly caught up to Pinocchio and swallowed him whole. Pinocchio woke up inside the whale's belly. He looked around and was shocked to see Geppetto. Pinocchio and Geppetto were very happy to be reunited. Together, they came up with an escape plan. Pinocchio and Geppetto waited for the whale to fall asleep and then swam out of his mouth while it snored. After many frightful adventures, Pinocchio finally learned to be honest and obedient to his father. As a reward, the fairy turned Pinocchio into a real boy. Pinocchio never lied again, and he and Geppetto lived happily ever after. The end.